Hello everyone, welcome to this first talk about training nutrition, energy balance and staying fit throughout the race season. This is the first webinar of our race webinar series. My name is Dr. Stefano Montanari and I'm gonna be your first speaker for today. So, just to give you an overview what's gonna go coming over the next weeks. Next week, Dr. Kelsey Johnson will talk about training the gut, carbohydrate loading, and pre-race nutrition. The following week, Vicky is going to talk you through hydration and electrolytes for training and racing. And the last talk, to close it off, Harvey is going to talk about race day nutrition strategies and the importance of post-race recovery. So if you follow along all these webinars, you're going to be provided with the knowledge and potentially tools to really upscale your current nutrition to support your training and your race. So as you can see from the logo, I'm a part of Total Endurance Nutrition. So we are a bunch of passionate practitioners, researchers and academics that we've been gathered together by the amazing Sam Shepard and Dr. Jules Strauss, which are the CEO of Total Endurance Nutrition. If you're interested in to improve and work on and receive some support in your nutrition journey, please go to the website. All of us have a bunch of specialities. As I said, we are involved. We have our hands involved in the field, so working with athletes. Some of us are working in academia, actively doing research to improve health and performance in individuals like general population and endurance athletes. So no matter what is your issue, I'm sure we're gonna got you covered. So please head out to the website if you wanna work with us and know more about us and how we supported previous athletes. So to give you just a quick overview who I am, as you can see, I have a bunch of qualifications around sport, especially around sport nutrition. I've been a practitioner since 2017, and as I said, I studied, but I did a PhD as well, but I also really like to apply what I learned and what I was doing research on into the field. So I've been a former performance nutritionist for Lewis FC, working with their women's team. At the time they were competing at championship level, second tier in the league, in the women's league here in UK. And on top of that, I work as a TAS performance nutritionist. So I support the athletes. They receive scholarship schemes to come to the university and study, at the same time still perform in a high level. So I support rowers, runners, cyclists, but also football players, people involved in mixed martial arts, so a bunch of different athletes with different skills and requirements. And on top of that, obviously working for 10, and I'm also a lecturer in sport nutrition at Manchester Metropolitan University. Below you can see some of my contacts, and so if you want to specifically send me a direct message, or head over to Instagram or send me an email, I'm going to be happy to reply to your queries. So enough about me, what we're going to cover today. So the main talk is going to be around what is energy balance briefly, and then how actually this energy balance is more developed in sport nutrition into energy availability. So I'm going to explain you what it is and why it's so dear and important to us, and how energy availability affects our body. Following that, we're going to move then into relative energy deficiency. So basically, when you are in low energy availability, you're going to potentially have some symptoms that gathered together are classified as REDS. And after that, when we have addressed the problem, we're going to look how to solve it. So what are going to be the nutrition strategy or the nutrition, I would say, recommendation that will help you prevent being in a low energy availability. And to close it off, a little bit of information about protein requirements and how to optimize your protein intake throughout the day. So talking about energy balance, for starter, the main, I think I really would like to emphasize from the beginning, it's athletes always, or regular general population, comes to nutritionist, and one of the first question, if it's not the first, is the second, is they ask, I'm taking these supplements, or what supplements should I take? With this, we have this conception that we are always looking for a quick fix, and usually taking a pill is very easy, and thinking that this pill is going to solve all your problems, unfortunately, is a misconception. So as you can see, supplements can help your performance and boost your performance or your health by 1 to 5%, which is a very small number. However, if you look at your foundation, the most bangs for your bucks comes from a balanced diet. So what you eat every day is what matters the most. So really investing and taking time into looking at what you consume day to day is really gonna give you the biggest payoff. And once you look at that, then out comes our bread and butter as a sport nutritionist. We can give you more information on how much macronutrient you should eat for carbohydrate, for example, when you should eat them around training, and what type of carbohydrate you should eat to optimize performance, recovery, health. And these are your foundations. On top of that, then supplements may help if everything on the bottom is done properly. So talking about energy balance, most of you may have this concept, know this concept. Basically is the difference between the calories that we're consuming and the calories we are expending, energy in versus energy out. If this match out, we maintain our weight. If we consume more than we expend over time, we will potentially gain weight. Vice versa, we will lose weight. To aim to gain weight or lose weight, technically, a good diet, a good nutrition plan should set you in a deficit or a surplus around 15 to 20% of your total calorie expenditure during the day. It's easy, it sounds easy, it's like a rule of thumb, but sometimes in sport this situation doesn't happen. I want to show you a study, some data of an athlete that I work with. And he came to me after a month that he said he was stuck with his weight. He couldn't lose weight. So he was thought he was eating too much, and he asked me for nutrition to drop some pounds. But when I look at his energy expenditure daily and how many calories he was consuming, tracking a little bit his diet, what we've seen is most of the days it was in an energy deficit, except Friday. The Saturday was more than 1,000 calories energy deficit. And what he'd been told me, he was having this lifestyle for months and a prolonged period of time. So what happened potentially in this case, he told me he was start losing weight, and then he stopped. This because he put his body in a prolonged and severe energy deficit, and basically his body went into a starvation mode, and so it was trying to maintain a homeostasis and not and being very diligent in conserving all the energies it was taking from the diet, because it was consuming too much during exercise. It wasn't matching energy intake and energy expenditure. And here comes the concept about energy availability. So most of you might know about resting metabolic rate. So usually when you go to a nutrition plan, they calculate, and we do as well, daily energy intake based on resting metabolic rate, so the calories that you spend at rest. Some of this energy is burned by the thermogenic effect of food. So when we consume protein, carbohydrates, when we digest them, not all the energy, not all those 4 kilocalories per grams of carbs are used as energy. Some are dispersed as heat. NEAT is non-exercise thermogenic activity. So when you're sitting down in a chair at your daily job, you're fidgeting, you're moving your feet. I'm Italian, sometimes you see my hands waving around. Is this non-voluntary movement that still burn a little bit of calories. And the orange one is the energy expenditure through exercise. However, the daily energy availability looks at this energy expenditure differently. So it is the energy that remains available to you when you remove the energy from exercise, is the energy that remains available to you to support your physiological process. So your cognitive function, your cardiovascular system, your immune system, your reproductive system, and is calculated, is based on your fat-free mass. So your muscles, your bones, your organs, so all the tissues and organs that require energy to support, to keep us alive, basically. And what happened in some situations, especially in endurance sports, so we triathletes, cyclists, but also like in team sport, I've seen. Our BMR, we have, depending if you're a male or a female, it can be between 1200 and 2000 calories. On top of that, you train, and if you see, like, for example, what could be a 3 session on a daily basis for a triathlete, you do your session on a run, you do your swim, and you do your bike session. And if you sum them together, the energy, the expenditure is surpassed what you expend sitting down on the sofa. And sometimes athletes, like in the case I showed you before, struggle to match these energy demands. So it's like you're thinking you're a phone with a low battery. You always eat, but never enough to charge yourself up to 100% or even 80%. You always like under eating and staying around 20, 40, maybe even 50% of your total battery. And so over time, if you think of your phone, or if you heard like keeping your phone at 20% of the battery, stress the battery. This is similar to our body. If we keep the body for a prolonged period of time with low energy, it gets stressed. And in this case, it turns out into low energy availability and relative energy deficiency, with a lot of complication that impacts our health. To give you just an overview what energy availability is classified in sport, we have 3 main sections. So as you can see, the green light is optimal energy availability, and as I said, is expressed as a fat-free mass, so 45 kilocalories per kilogram of fat-free mass. Consuming around this amount will keep you in a weight maintenance phase, and it will give you adequate energy for all your physiological function, and on top and support your training. If you consume between 30 and 45 kilocalories, usually is when you drop energy intake, you drop calories to, for example, to lose some weight. However, this cut should be implemented in a structured weight loss program. It shouldn't last too long. Unfortunately, what happens is many athletes end up being in the red zone, in the clinical LEA, so below 30 kilocalories per kilogram of fat-free mass, and they stay unknowingly in this range for a prolonged period of time. And this will have severe health implications, and over time will impair your training adaptation, and it will impair your performance. And I'm going to show you in a few moments some example. So why people end up being in a LEA? Well, the first issue sometimes is we don't know how much we eat. We never look at our diet. We never took it into much consideration, so we are knowingly under eating. The second reason might be, as I mentioned, body composition goals. Either they're driven by social media, by your teammates, by your coach, and also with this conception that, especially in endurance, you need to be leaner, you need to be smaller, and you want to get faster. Is this true? It could be, but if it comes to at the expense of your health, potentially you're not getting faster and you're not getting stronger and fitter, but instead you are impacting your performance negatively. The third point is increased train volume. So you might be fine for a part of the season, then your training and your volume ramps up because you're going to need to get prepared for the race. But the nutrition doesn't follow along. So you're changing your training, but your nutrition stays the same. So you end up in a low energy availability state. And the fourth point, unfortunately, some people suffer from eating disorders. This sometimes correlates with, are associated with body composition goals, pressure to look in a certain way, and people develop eating disorders, and then obviously with those comes lower energy availability and lower consumption of calories. So now I will show you some example of how LIA impact some of our physiological functions. The first example I want to give it to you is the effects of LIA on bone metabolism. So our bones are constantly remodeling, not very fast, but they break down and they reform constantly. So what this study did, they measured some markers of bone resorption, so bone breakdown, and some markers of bone formation. And they compared two groups. One group, they had two groups, males and females. Both groups had 5 days of being optimal energy availability, so in the green zone, and one group and went then to the other condition with low energy availability in the clinical situation, so below 30. So the first result I want to show you here is about this marker beta CTX is a marker of bone resorption, so bone breakdown. The solid bar, as you can see from the caption, are when they are consuming enough calories, so they are in optimal LIA. The stripe bar is when they were in a low energy availability. And as you can see in this case, for the for the females, the bone resorption was significantly higher when they were in a low energy availability. So they were breaking more bones, more bone tissue. The second marker was P1MP that they measured. And this marker is the opposite. It's a marker of bone formation. So we're rebuilding our bones. And what they seen in this situation in both sexes, males and females, this marker was down-regulated. In the males, this difference was not significant, but still you can see bigger down-regulation comparing optimal energy availability. In the female, again, the formation of bones was impaired and was significantly different from the optimal energy availability. And you can think if it was just 5 days. Now, don't get too worried. It's not like you get 5 days of low energy availability, you're going to break your bones the next day. But if you think if this situation is maintained for a prolonged period of time, your bones will become more fragile, and this will increase the risk of fractures. The second example I want to show you is the effect of LIA on iron absorption. So in this, iron is important for many reasons in our body. One of the main ones is a part of red blood cells and helps carrying oxygen to our cells. And when we are working at high intensity, or when we are exercising, our muscle contracts and need oxygen to contract and to generate energy. So having lower iron, having impaired iron metabolism, impaired iron absorption can affect our energy levels, and this might one reason you underperforming or you feeling tired. So in this study, what they measure again, they compare low energy availability against near normal energy availability, and they measure this marker called epsidin. Epsidin is a hormone produced in the liver that plays a crucial role in iron homeostasis. So one of the functions that it has, it blocks iron absorption in the small intestine. So as you can see in the LIA condition, these values, this hormone was significantly more produced with the normal energy availability. So you can think of is basically blocking the absorption of iron. And in a study, just a 3 days intervention in young female, they saw that low energy availability increases the expression by 264%, which is a huge number. And most interesting, complicated word for me, they also saw that even when the group had the same amount of energy, so consuming the same amount of calories, but one group have low carbohydrate diet, the increment of epsilon was still higher in the group with low carb diet by 69%. So this gives you a hint of what could be the nutrition recommendation I'm going to give you later. The last part I want to show you is obviously the effects on the reproductive function in females and males. Starting with the females, the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis governs the reproductive system. So send signals to the anterior pituitary and then the ovaries to produce estrogen and progesterone. And these hormones, you will know they are fundamental, they are crucial for the well-being of a woman to have a healthy menstrual cycle, and both hormones impact on cardiovascular system, immune system, our muscles. They have many receptors in our body and keeps always someone fertile and the possibility to have a pregnancy and have babies. What happened with the low energy mode? Well, the body reacts simply saying, okay, you are expending a lot of energy doing a lot of stuff during the day, but you're not consuming enough. So I need to be very diligent at conserving this energy and repurpose the use of this energy to keep us alive and keep us going. So while I'm doing it, I'm shutting down the reproductive system. I'm shutting down the production of estrogen and estrogen and progesterone, because obviously we're not getting enough energy. So I can't afford you to potentially get pregnant and support a pregnancy. We don't have enough to do this. So it stops the production of these two hormones. And this causes some women, obviously, over a prolonged period of time to be in oligomenorrhea, lose their menstrual cycle, or be on amenorrhea, so lose them more 3 consecutive periods. And this has a huge impact on their health and their well-being, and obviously the performance as well. Similar for the males, even the males are a little bit more resilient to low energy availability. There have been studies that have shown the runners, for example, who cover 81% of kilometers per week, show lower levels of total testosterone, as well as lower level of energy availability compared to the inactive counterparts. So they were exercising a lot, but they were consuming less calories, and the testosterone levels were lower. They also seen the lower testosterone levels were related to higher bone injuries, 4 times higher, more prevalent. What also being a low energy availability causes to all of us is an inflammatory state in our body. It rises up the presence of cortisol. And you can see also in this another study, they've seen the ratio between testosterone and cortisol was lower. So we have a lower production of sexual hormone and then higher inflammatory states. I mentioned I reported you 3 cases, but actually what low energy availability then translate and how it impacts our body is systemic. And this goes under the umbrella of relative energy deficiencies. So as you can see from the graph, it has an impact not also in our bones, in our menstrual function, but also on our growth and development, our psychological function, our cardiovascular function, our gastrointestinal function, and our immune system. And what this translates into symptoms that you might have been encountered during your career as an athlete. Well, you might start and you might have incurring more injury than often, or more often than not. You might struggle to keep up with training and adapt. You might not make the best decisions, but also you might feel more prone to illness. This also is not only physiological, but it also affects your mood. You might start feeling more irritable. You might suffer more from depression, having more up and downs. And it might be related to also like some GI issues, and if very prolonged, in case for female, especially with the female triad, it can lead to early onsets of osteoporosis. So all these symptoms, that they don't have to be all together, but are some of red flags that if you're experiencing them for a prolonged period of time, then potentially you should like switch on a light bulb in your mind and say like, well, hang on a minute, why I'm feeling like that, and potentially turn your eye to looking at your nutrition. Am I eating enough to support all the training that I'm doing? And the first question I got to you is, do you train every day the same? It's a rhetorical question. Most of us don't do it. They change it. So you have some days you have one session, some days you have two sessions. The weekend you go for a long ride. Some days you have a rest. Some days you have 3 sessions in a day. But the second question you have is, do you eat every day similar amount of food or type of foods? That's actually might get some of you thinking. Is your breakfast changing as your training schedule is changing within a week? The amount of snacks you do, the portion sizes of your meals, or more or less do these ones across the whole week are similar, and then maybe the weekend, a few days, you change a little bit the portion size because you're feeling more hungry, but it's more accidentally they're actually planned. And in sport nutrition, what concept again that we are very dear to us is fueling for the work required. So is the simple approach in thinking the more you train, the more you go out there and exercise, the more you should eat to support your training. Which is counterproductive to what all the world says to you. They tell you to say you eat less, but if you're exercising a lot, you need to consume more food to support exercise. So here is a simple images, like we call these are performance plates from Gatorade. So you can see as we move from an easy rest day when you have a recovery session, skill session, up to a hard day where you have high intensity training session or multiple session a days, competition, long rides. Your nutrition should shift and change a bit, especially what we've seen here. What is increasing is the orange part, the orange arc, which are the carbohydrates. The more you train, the more you want to consume carbohydrates to support your training. Protein more or less stay the same. You reduce the amount of vegetables and fibers to allow you to consume more of the carbohydrates to support your exercise. And why carbohydrates are so important? Because in our body, carbs are limited as a store. We store them as a glycogen in our liver, 60 to 100 grams, and in our muscles we can store more, 400 to 800 grams of glycogen. But if we compare this to the amount of fat sources that we have in our body that are stocked in our adipose tissues and some in intramuscular triglycerides, it pale as a comparison. Because if we put together the calories from intramuscular triglycerides and adipose tissues, we have a whooping 34,000 to 230,000 kilocalories available even in the leanest individual. So with this amount of energy, you can cover multiple marathons. However, and so maybe this is comes the conflict and some of confusion about people saying I can complete an Ironman or a marathon or whatever competition relying on only on my fat sources, so I don't have to consume food during my exercise. That's true. The question is though, how fast do you want to go? How fast do you want to complete your marathon or your Ironman, or even your training session? How intense those training sessions are? Because if you see here in this graph, where we have the amount of carbohydrates we consume in the red and the amount of carbohydrates in percentage we consume, fats we consume in green. These have this change have an inverse relationship when we move from resting up to 100% of our maximal aerobic capacity. So basically what we're going is we're increasing in intensity. The higher we go, the more we move towards the right, the higher goes the intensity. And this is quite important because when we compete, or some of your high intensity training session, they heavily rely on carbohydrates, and these resources are finite. So if you're thinking you've done a training session like an hour on the turbo, or where you do repeated sprints, you're really tapping into your glycogen in the liver and your glycogen in the muscles. And I can show you here some of the studies that look at muscle glycogen and how this was decreased over time depending on the intensity. So you can see, for example, the top top lane, the top line, the study that looked, for example, how much glycogen was consumed over 240 minutes at 56% of the VO2 max. So here we are still like relying a mix between carbs and fat. A lot of glycogen was consumed and depleted. So if you don't consume enough carbohydrates after this, or even during the session, that's the reason why you might bonk, you might not complete your session, or when the session is completed, you don't have the energy necessary to perform the second training of the day or the third training of the day, because you are too tired and you don't have any more muscle glycogen left in you to support those high intensities. So here comes our bread and butter in sport nutrition. I'm gonna give you some recommendation on how much carbohydrates you should consume, a little bit of a timing, and what type of carbohydrates can help you reach your goals and support your training and stay fit and healthy. So as I showed you the performance split before, moving from a rest day to a high intensity training day, and I mentioned the carbohydrate should increase, here how much they should increase. So if you have on a light day, I'm almost assuming like people are on in this case sort of energy balance, but it should be between 3 and 5 grams per kilogram a day of an athlete body mass. As you move into moderate, this goes up by between 4 and 7 grams. It depends really on the individuals and the training. Is a range. And as you can guess, when we move too high, it goes between 6 to 10 grams. So if you especially train 3 hours a day or even more, and some of these sessions are very high intensity, you might want to look into like the 6 kilograms a day of your body mass to support the training. And the very high is when you have very, very demanding session, the long training session, the long rides are quite like good intensities, or your competition race days, where you should consume a larger quantity of carbs. And Kelsey next week is going to talk you through about carbohydrate loading strategy that revolve around this amount of carbohydrates to consume in a single day, and how to train in the gut. I give you an hint: if you start eating a little bit more carbs and doing an effort to support your training, your gut will become trained and be more tolerated to support larger amount of carbohydrates. To give you an idea of the amount of carbs that are present in foods, here I classified some example between being low, moderate, and high in carbohydrates. All these foods combined in meals, snacks, will give you like a good chance to consume enough carbohydrates for any given day. It's just to give you an example of different sources and how much carbs you can find within. So for example, if you're having a long ride on a Sunday and you need to replenish your glycogen stores in the morning, you might want to have a large bowl of cornflakes, for example, adding a tablespoon of honey, and having next to it like a big glass of orange juice. Doing so, you will ensure, and then potentially even like a banana in your cornflakes, ensure you have enough carbohydrates to start fueling your long ride. And why I'm saying this is just I want to report your case from Declan Rice. I know it's not like a triathlete or a cyclist, but football can be seen as a little bit of a endurance sport. You have this bunch of guys that are chasing a ball for 90 minutes. But then if you add on top of this that they're doing a warm-up before, and in some situation they go into extra time, they play way more than 90 minutes. So it's sort of like it's an endurance event, and has element of a high intensity, so they need to sprint, and a little bit of low intensity with the joggle around the pitch. And this quote for Declan Rice, they asked him, what is the secret behind your energetic performance? And he simply said, when I joined Arsenal, I've seen the players consuming pancakes before games, and I said, like, well, that must be wrong. But they start doing it and said, I have 4 pancakes before a game covered in syrup or honey. And he says, I don't understand the science behind it, or what's in them or anything like that, but it gives me such an energy boost. And he says this energy boost is what keep me able to rattle around the pitch, as he says. And he doesn't understand the science of what's in them. It's not a big secret, it's just carbohydrates. And what he's doing, having this high amount of carbs before a game, is replenishing those glycogen stores and making sure that then his body has an amount of energy stored in muscles and liver to tap in while he's like running around chasing the ball. In terms of what type of carbohydrate you should consume, when you move from a rest training day or a skill training day, so low in intensity, to the moderate, high, and very high training day, so your selection of carbohydrates should shift from a prevalence of low glycemic index food, so food that have a little bit, they are more nutrient dense, compared to food that are more calorie dense. In this case, they are more dense in carbohydrates. The other perks is not they always also carry more carbohydrates per weight, but also there will be more digestible. They have less fiber. They're more refined. And I know some people are very scared about food that spikes up your glucose or increase your insulin, but everything needs to be put into context. In this case, consuming food that have a higher density of carbohydrates will help you support the exercise, because this food is going to be stocked and used by your body. It's not going to be an excess of calories on your total daily intake. It's going to be most of it used to perform, and therefore consuming medium to high glycemic food in those days will help you digest them faster and use them faster during your training session. In terms of timing and refueling in this case, we need to consider a few questions. So the most important question you have to ask yourself is, when is my next session? How much time do I have to recover? More than 8 hours? Less than 8 hours? How much food did I have before and during the training? Did I have a session fasted? Did I have I had only water during my training session? What is the goal of the next session? Is it going to be a high intensity training? Is it going to be a stroll, like a recovery run, very chilled, very low intensity and short? How intense and long was the session that I've just did? All these questions really dictate what you're going to consume as a recovery. And one example I want to give it to you is a study that look at the timing of consuming carbohydrates and how this impact glycogen resynthesis in our body, in our muscles. So they have 12 males. They performed 70 minutes of glycogen depleting exercise. So they were given a high intensity, and they did the same 2 weeks apart. So they repeated the trial. But one time they consume a drink immediately after, and another time they waited 2 hours to consume the same amount of carbs after the session. So the only difference here is the timing, immediately after versus 2 hours. And as you can see, the white bar, when they consumed it immediately after, there was a significantly higher glycogen synthesis compared to when they waited 2 hours. In this case, it was a 45% increment. So there were 45% more. There was 45% more glycogen in the muscles resynthesized when they consumed the drink immediately after. And this is because, as a recovery, our muscles are primed to uptake glucose, to uptake sugars immediately after exercise. And this window is quite short. As you can see, is around a couple of hours. So it's really important that we consume some carbs immediately after exercise. And I know this sometimes might be difficult because exercise blunts appetites first. Second, you're not feeling hungry, you start getting change, you get in your car, you travel, and then you're feeling like you're having other commitments, and then you forgot to eat, and those 2 hours pass. And what's happening is basically you are slowing down your recovery process. So it's really important to keep in mind to consume something, especially carbohydrates, after your endurance training sessions. And the question asked before, like when is my next training session, is what is going to drive most of your decision. So if you have less than 8 hours to recover in between session, and especially if the next session are going to be quite demanding, you would like to consume 0.8 to 1.2 grams of kilograms of carbohydrates per hour, every hour or every couple of hours for the first 4 to 6 hours. If you have longer recovery, so it's quite aggressive as a strategy. If you have longer period to recover, more than 8 hours, or so maybe it's the last session of the day, or let's say the following session is very slow paced and the previous session wasn't as demanding, the most important part is you making sure you still consume some carbs, but you don't have to be as aggressive to consume it every hour or every 2 hours. The most important part is to hit your daily requirements. The last part, if for example you have shorter recovery windows, or you're struggling to consume 1.2 grams per kilogram of your body mass in carbs, and you're consuming less, adding a source of protein will help improve the glycogen resynthesis. This because not only carbs increases insulin, but also consuming protein increases insulin as well. Insulin is normally produced in our body. It helps us absorb and uptake the glucose in our muscles, in our cells. So pairing protein and carbohydrates in this situation can help a little bit with recovery. And speaking about protein now, I want to ask you, what do you eat? When do you eat your largest protein portion of the day? So if you think about how much protein you consume at breakfast, at lunch, at dinner, when do you consume the largest amount of protein? And most of the people, apologies, there is a little error in the graph. The last bar should be higher than 20 grams. Most what we see always in athletes we work with, most of the people consume the larger amount of protein in the evening. It's quite common. They have the larger meal, more protein, but they struggle to consume the adequate amount at breakfast, at lunchtime, and even a snack around the snacks. What we would like to have is a more even distribution of protein across the day. And why I'm saying this is because, like our bones, our muscles break down and rebuild daily. Around 1 to 2% of our muscle are constantly rebuilt every day. So here we have two lines. The dotted lines, MPS, means muscle protein synthesis. So we're building up muscles. The green one is muscle protein breakdown, and we're destroying our muscles. So as you can see, if we distribute protein intake across the day, we're always sending a signal to our body to synthesize, to build muscles. And this is quite important, because if you consider also when you exercise, after exercise the muscle is damaged, so the muscle protein breakdown is more increased. When you wake up in the morning and you didn't have any protein, you are in a muscle protein breakdown phase. So making sure that you consume regularly, every 3 to 4 hours, a serving of protein will help you like send this signal to our body to promote muscle protein synthesis. And this is quite important because it will help you retain muscle mass if you are, for example, in a weight loss phase, or build more muscles, hopefully, if you are in a weight gain program. Here, just a simple overview of protein that we can find in different food sources. I'm not telling you need to be vegan or omnivores or vegetarian, whatever. We can find proteins everywhere. Obviously, animal-based foods are more dense with protein compared to plant-based sources. So if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, maybe you want to have a little closer look on making sure you're consuming enough protein throughout the day. But just to give you an idea, you can find proteins almost everywhere. Also, like people that consume large amount of meals, one medium chicken breast can almost cover the goal for the meal, so you don't need to consume large amount of chicken to hit your protein goals. To give you then a quick overview of the fueling for training required, well, carbohydrates, as I mentioned, really vary between 3 to 12 grams per kilogram of body mass, depending on the activity you're doing. Protein fairly stays the same, between 1.4 to 2 grams per kilogram of body mass, or you can make it like 4 to 5 servings of 0.3 grams per kilogram of body mass spread throughout the day. And the remaining calories are fat, so 20 to 30% of your total energy expenditure. They comes from, we recommend them to come from mainly seeds, oils, and nuts, vegetable oils, and nuts and avocados, and also fatty fish such as salmon. So closing off, I would like to reflect a bit. So if you find yourself asking some of these questions, why I'm always tired, why I'm always feeling hungry, why I'm not progressing in my training, why can't I perform, or why do I get ill so often, why have I a irregular period or a missing period, what should I do? The first thing is look at your diet. You look at your nutrition plan. Is it adequate to support the amount of exercise you're doing now? Is the best? Are you consuming the right amount of foods at the right time? These are crucial questions, and investing time in your nutrition can really give you like a huge benefit. Even like if you've never done it, probably if you do it like for a week, you will see immediately like start feeling different. It can give you a big payback. Another question that I have for you is, are your performance number your true worth? Because some of you might feel like, I'm okay, I'm doing fairly okay, I'm not feeling tired, I'm not hungry, I may have my regular period, etc. But you never look, for example, at your nutrition too much. And the number that you see on your Garmin, on your sport watch, on Training Peaks, are telling the truth of how much you're worth. So imagine you buy in a car and the person that sells to you says it can go for 150 miles, and it's always been going for 150 miles. It reached its potential. But then you go home, and the first thing you do, you go to the full gas station and you actually fill the tank and put the right type of fuel, and suddenly the car can go, you try to push it, and instead of going for 150 miles, it goes for 300 miles before stopping. So basically this analogy is saying like, when you put the right amount of energy and the right type of energy, then you're gonna have a huge improvement. So you unlock your full potential as a person, as an athlete. And I want to give you like this quote from Susie Parker. She was a nutritionist at Milwaukee Bucks. So there is an NBA team, basketball team. They won the ring when she joined. They won the championship. And it says nutrition is a training partner. It's like a training partner. And it's a quote that I love because it's like, she says, it's like a friend. Whenever you relationship, when you have a relationship, if you commit to the relationship, if you take care of your relationship, the benefit that you get in back is huge. So it says if you really invest in your nutrition, it can help hugely. And then the other few things I want to take in consideration is whenever you embark a journey in nutrition, whatever you decided to do with us or you do on your own, don't strive for perfection. Strive for consistency, because being perfect is impossible. But if you are consistent, is what will transform your average performance, what you think you're worth now, into excellence performance. Nutrition usually is what can make an athlete very, very good. But if an athlete is very good and doesn't take care of his nutrition, it becomes average. And I'm saying this because one of the key performance indicators for an athlete across a season is to complete 80% of your training schedule. Those that do that have the greater success in competition, and they perform better. So if you're consistent with your nutrition, it will help you being consistent with your training, and will help you stay fit, stay healthy first of all, get fit, adapt, get stronger, and when it's time, you will perform. So here, just an overview of the topic that we had today. Obviously, we went through the health, the nutrition is the foundation for health and performance, the role of energy balance, and how this is looked into in sport nutrition as energy availability, and what happens when you are in a low energy availability, how does it impact your health. We look at some example of bone metabolism, reproductive system, and the iron absorption. Then the overall symptoms that are associated with the relative energy deficiency. And then we went into look at some of the recommendation, and the main concept I want you to bring at home as an endurance athlete: carbs are king. The more you train, the more you want to eat them to support your training demands. Finally, a quick hint about distributing protein to maximize the chance to prime your body to always send a reminder like to rebuild the muscles. And finally, hope this talk got you thinking about how nutrition can be your best training partner throughout your training season. So really look into taking care of your training partner will help you immensely in the long run. Just a quick reminder, next time we're going to have Kelsey talking about, so the 12th of June, talking about training the gut, carbohydrate loading, and pre-race nutrition. And this is, for me, is everything. I'm gonna go, I saved some of the questions for you, so give me 1 second. Some of the questions I got from the talk yesterday evening. Let me retrieve them. So one person asked, I'm always tired in the afternoon, even if I'm consuming lunch. What would you recommend? So this question is a bit is general, because the person didn't mention about what they were consuming before, or what type of training they've done during the day. But the answer could be simply like, not much food has been consumed at breakfast or at snack time. So for example, you might have a good lunch, a good portion, maybe a good amount of carbohydrates, but what are the other points that are all the other nutrition window optimized and taken care of? Most people don't consume enough calories at breakfast. For example, they have little appetite in the morning, so either they skip it or have a small portion, and then they wait until lunch to have a proper meal, and after that it might be not very balanced in terms of macronutrients, not feeling very full, and then they train and then they start feeling tired because your body is being in an energy deficit throughout the day, and then it takes its toll later. Some people even train fasted, and what they do, they don't account for the calories they didn't have a breakfast, and they don't recover them after the training. So they keep on eating what they usually would do in a normal day, and this might make you feel tired. Another person asked about, so I mentioned about the importance of consuming carbs immediately after the training session, and she said, like, I have no appetite. What should I do? Should I force the food down? It's understandable that some people might not feeling hungry, because, as I said, training suppress, especially intensity training, suppress hunger. However, it depends on the question. Depends on the training. If it's gonna come, if you have a next training session, you want to consume anyway some food, and my takeaway would be change your perspective, change how you view things. Instead of thinking like I have to force food down myself, thinking about how this meal is going to support my health and my training. Eat with, in this case I told athletes, eat with intent. What is your next intent? What is your intent? A practical solution for this is also changing your point of view. So thinking it is beneficial for me, for my health and my recovery, but also like trying to consume, instead of solid foods, consuming foods that you can drink. So for example, bringing with you powders, or foods that are more dense in calories and carbohydrates, especially thinking about granola bars, which are very small and don't require a lot of chewing and big volumes of food. The other thing, as Emily mentioned on the panel, was bring with you foods or shakes, juices that you like and you enjoy, so you will feel less that you are forcing yourself to eat and to recover. Another question was about carbs are inflamed. I've been told the carbs are inflammatory, and we should eat or should rely more on fat sources. So I'm not sure what is the source in terms of carbs inflammation. It might be related to general population. They consume a high amount of refined food, but this population, they don't train, they don't eat the right amount of macronutrients, and they're in an excess of calories. They're consuming more than what they're expending, and this over time it can cause insulin resistance, and then it causes an inflammatory state that leads to obesity and diabetes. But this is not related to you as a population, as an active population. They actually need the energy to perform an exercise. And it's true, you can rely on fat, and as an endurance athlete, you train to be able to tap more on those energy sources, which are almost, not true, but looks unlimited. But as more you train to tap in your energy source, in fat sources, you still will rely on carbohydrates to support your energy, your high intensity activities. So you still use degrade the glycogen. Therefore, it's really important that carbohydrates are consumed sufficiently to replenish these sources. The last question was, if I can remember correctly, it was about, I don't like tracking. How could I increase my amount of carbohydrates throughout the day? Well, I haven't shown you that there are ways of, for example, have a rough estimate of how much carbohydrates based on the hand guide. But this is more for general population, where they recommend, for example, the portion of carbohydrates to be the palm of the hand. But it will be a little bit more prone to error, so it might take a little bit more time to understand if you're eating enough. The other way to do it is simply follow those performance plates. So thinking about when I'm having a large like a very intense training day, intense training session. Is my lunch, is my dinner, who is the main protagonist of the plate? Are the protein, are the veggies, or are the carbohydrates? And doing like this, you increase your portion size of carbohydrates, so you are at least trying to be more aware of what you're consuming throughout the day, and this can help you support your training. My last, I would say, to close off, I will again invite you to change your perspective on this thing. So think about maybe investing. I know people don't like tracking sometimes, but it will help you be more aware quickly, especially if you are an athlete, you are exercising a lot. So maybe tracking like 3-4 top 1 week top of your typical nutrition, maybe Monday to Friday, Monday to Saturday with a long ride. Just 1 week, it will give you like so much value in terms of like, it will open your eyes, like saying, I'm eating enough. And then based on that, the following week without tracking, you are more aware, okay, this amount, this day I had this, it wasn't enough, so I had one fruit, I had a couple extra 20 grams more of pasta, an extra slice of bread, and a wrap on the side. All this will help then improving your carbohydrate intake and go closer to those recommendations that I highlighted before. So with this, I'm finishing the recording. Thank you so much for sticking up with me. Again, if you have any other question, feel free to reach out on our website and send queries, and we will be happy to work with you and support you through with nutrition to support your training and competition journey, and stay healthy, fit, and get fit and strong throughout the season. Thank you again. Don't miss the next webinars. See you soon. Bye bye.